Hello everybody and welcome to Wargaming. I'm XVCJ. If you're still not familiar with what Wargaming is, just click the link right here. And that is our 2-minute intro video. It'll give you a good idea of what Wargaming is. But today we're going to be doing another unit review for the Tau. If you haven't seen one of our unit reviews in the past, basically what we do is we try to expand on what the lore is, because we think that understanding the lore makes the game a lot more fun and immersive, and just overall better experience for everybody. And we also touch on the unit's wargear, as well as its tabletop uses. But this is Wargaming after all, and today we're going to be hitting on one of my favorite infantry units in all of the Tau Empire, and that is the Pathfinders. So the most important question that we're going to answer is, do Pathfinders have gains? Let's find out. Pathfinders are members of the Fire caste, just like their Fire Warrior brethren. And to the layman, they probably look quite similar, with the exception of pointy, goofy-looking helmets and no thigh pads. They do appear to be quite similar. However, that's kind of where the similarities end. Where a Fire Warrior will stay in a building using pulse rifles delayed, decimating amounts of fire from a safe distance, the Pathfinders will range ahead of their cadre, often pretty much out in the open and being the closest to actually engage with the enemy. Pathfinders follow the same career path as their Fire Warrior brethren. However, those that volunteer to become a Pathfinder are often the youngest and most zealous members of the cadre, and the biggest exemplars of the greater good itself. But one common misconception that people have that aren't involved with playing Tau or aren't really into the lore of the Tau is that Pathfinders are not snipers. Because come on, got a sniper hit on 4. Doesn't work. As we briefly mentioned in our Fire Warrior unit review that you could click on right here, the Tau species as a whole are generally nowhere near as combat capable as your average Terran. However, they are quite intelligent, and they make up for a lot of those physical deficiencies by the utilization of very advanced technology. One of the most glaring deficiencies in Tau biology is that it's theorized that Tau actually perceive time differently, as we mentioned in the Fire Warrior unit review. That is not a terribly hard conclusion to come to. On Holy Terra itself, it is assumed that many animals in the animal kingdom will perceive time differently. For example, a fly, your common housefly, will perceive time as if it's moving in slow motion. One of the reasons they react to a fly swatter as quickly as they do. It's assumed that Tau perceive time pretty much in the opposite spectrum, where everything appears to be moving much faster to them than it would be to us. Secondly, Tau pupils do not dilate. That makes having depth perception a much bigger inhibition to them compared to us. Their depth perception is nowhere near as good as ours, although they are able to see in a wider spectrum of light. So it's not difficult to conclude then that without all the fancy optics in their helmets, they would most likely be shooting like orcs or stormtroopers. It's whiskey. So how do the Tau make up for these obvious deficiencies? With flashlights, of course. Yes, the trusty marker light is the weapon of choice for the Tau Pathfinder squad. Tau Pathfinders will range far ahead of the rest of their cadre and determine where the enemy units are, and inform their cadre of not only their units, but their formations and their locations, and make targeting much simpler. Because in the 41st millennium, there is no aerial reconnaissance. Not only are they able to relay critical tactical information to the rest of the members of their cadre, they can actually pinpoint high priority targets, actually helping the targeting systems on Tau battlesuits and Fire Warriors create a better targeting solution and improving the chances of hitting your target by roughly 16%. When you look at the kind of volume of fire that your average Tau cadre is going to be putting out, that can be quite a significant amount more shots actually finding their mark. Speaking of marks, the Tau marker light isn't the most inconspicuous thing in the world, or in the galaxy, of the 41st millennium. It's so recognizable, in fact, that the little red dot making a mark on a Astra Militarum, for example, guardsman's armor, has been named the Mark of the Valkyrie. Which is pretty much a sign of imminent death. Nothing good is coming of that. Although Pathfinder teams tend to be dropped off in the lore from Devilfish transports, they often have to exfiltrate themselves on their own. But the importance of the marker light in Tau military doctrine is so important that oftentimes the Pathfinder teams will maintain their marker lights on their targets far past the point of safe exfiltration. So that is why the Tau Pathfinder teams have a mortality rate of roughly 85%. Pathfinder wargear is quite a bit like your average fire warriors. However, there's quite a bit less armor. They give that up for the opportunity to move a little quicker, represented on the tabletop by a 7-inch movement as opposed to a 6. So they still possess the same fancy future fish communist armor Fiotech as the fire warriors, but it's a lot less. The most common weapon loadout for your Pathfinders is going to be your pulse carbine with an underslung photon grenade and a marker light. We talked about the pulse carbine in the fire warrior review. Not the best, not the worst. And a photon grenade is a defensive weapon used in the same manner as you would expect that a modern flashbang grenade would work. But the key for the Pathfinder is going to be the marker lights. Pathfinder teams are known to take up to 3 special weapons into their squad. Most notably the rail rifle. And the rail rifle is the pinnacle of Tau anti-infantry technology. It's actually so strong that it could fairly easily take down heavy infantry like an Imperial Terminator or even some light vehicles with pretty much just by themselves. They also actually have a range of specialty drones known only to them. For example, the grav inhibitor drone. The grav inhibitor drone creates a gravitic anomaly within the tabletop or within the world that they're in and keeps any enemies that are approaching them further back, making it much more difficult to engage directly. They also have a pulse accelerator drone. Pulse accelerator drones can actually improve shooting by up to 20% unless you are commanding a Borkin Sept cadre, because then it's a little bit less because they shoot more normally, so it ends up being a little bit less. They also have a recon drone, which has a burst cannon and is big. That's cool. Yeah. So on the tabletop, Pathfinders are pretty useful, although they are a bit overcosted for a unit that has the same stat line as basically an Astra Militarum Guardsman. But we could take up to 10 of them, so for a unit that's basically sole job is to pour marker lights on an enemy from range, they can be super helpful. So let's go into marker lights really briefly. Marker lights will stack, as was fact a few facts ago. So if you don't have a unit that will put a marker light on a 2+, like a Cadre Fireblade, it makes sense to slow roll them. It's also important to note that marker lights work pretty much exactly the same in Overwatch. So if you're able to bypass the urge to use your pulse carbines to fire at your enemy that's rushing at you and use them with some greater good and put marker lights on your enemy that's charging on you, then you not only, if you're Tau Sept, hitting on 5s and 6s, but you also get the reroll 1s as you would normally. 1 marker light gives you reroll 1s. It's always awesome. 2 marker lights makes you hit your destroyer missiles on your normal ballistic skill instead of hitting on a 6. So anybody ever seen anybody use destroyer missiles, like except for like once? Who cares? 3, your enemy doesn't get a cover bonus. That's actually pretty cool. 4 marker lights on your enemy, and that means that you can move a heavy weapon and not have a penalty. That can be super useful if you're using a Riptide or using your broadsides that have heavy weapons that are going to be putting down a large volume of fire against the target. And 5 is the creme de la creme, the one that we all go for, the one we use command points for to do uplink marker lights to get 5, is that you get 1 to your roll for a hit. That is the best thing, and that's why marker lights are so important, because of that, because those 5 marker lights, you hit somebody 5 times, you can now shoot somebody like an average Space Marine. Yeah. Pathfinders and that stupid recon drone have really found their niche in Kill Team. Apparently in the baby 40k game, they usually will kit them out with the rail rifles, and they can be just devastating on the little tiny tabletop. But I usually play Corn when I play Kill Team, so I lose constantly. It's just because I run at people like idiots because it's fun. Blood for the Blood God. So are Pathfinders going to be the best option for marker light support on the tabletop? Well, that's debatable. A good commander is going to be targeting your Pathfinders pretty much immediately, about the same time they're targeting your drones. So you tend to lose them fairly quickly if somebody really understands what your army does. That's one of the reasons that Fireside Marksmen are considered by a lot of people to be a better option for Marker Light support. However, they are costed much higher, but they do hit on 3s, and they do have a character keyword, so somebody can't target them unless they have a special rule that allows them to. But for the points cost, and you can take up to 10 of them in a squad, you really give yourself an option to put a lot of marker lights on multiple different targets, and that's not really something you get with the Fireside Marksman. But this is, of course, still wargaming, and the main question out there is, do Pathfinders have gains? And I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm going to say, yes, they do. And if for no other reason, because they're still fire warriors, still Tau, fish, weebo, communist, reptiles, or whatever, because Tau's the desert. Despite all that, they have gains because of their massive Phiotech constructed balls, or Tau ball equivalents. And that's what gives them gains, and that's what makes them wargaming approved. Well, that'll wrap up this unit review. I really hope you enjoyed it. We put out new content every Tuesday that we feel particularly ambitious, and every Thursday for sure. So if you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of our fun content. So until next time, roll strong.